we were just talking about shame. And I think self compassion is important because we can't shame ourselves into healthy personal development. And it indicates an acceptance of self, which is the affirmative introspection domain, knowing what makes you tick, being comfortable in your own skin.
This is Because People Matter, a podcast about celebrating leaders who are harnessing the gift of human differences, creating inclusion while driving success in their organization and communities. Hosted by Dr. Helen Fagan, each episode features interviews with individuals who are leading the way. If you're ready to learn the impact becoming inclusive can have in your business, or wish to hear positive stories of impact, this is the podcast for you.
Hello, everyone. So thank you for being with us. And what makes this even more special is having you all follow us. We're excited about that. Please share and follow and rate and keep forwarding this information on. We love all the love you're sending our way. And also in this episode, I get to interview, have a conversation with someone who is near and dear to my heart, almost like a daughter to me. I have known her for a very long time and have had the pleasure of watching her grow and blossom into this incredible professional female in our community who's highly respected, is a mom, is a wife, but just finished her law degree and has done incredible things in our community and continues to do incredible things. We have just a candid conversation about what it's like to be a Black woman in America, and just so I don't want to take up any more time. I just invite you to listen in. Well, hello there, friend. It is so good to have you here.
Hello. I'm so happy to be on the Because People Matter podcast. I feel really honored to be included especially with all of the other guests that you've had before. So thank you for having me.
I have looked forward to this conversation ever since we met a while back and chatted about, what we're going to cover during this time. So thank you so much for saying yes. Just to get us started for our audience, I just want you to give us a glimpse into your own story and describe the experiences that led you to discover and kind of gain this level of self compassion and appreciation for who you are as a woman of color.
Yes, I'd be happy to. So, my name is Shannon Mangram. I'm from Lincoln, Nebraska. I'm so proud of being from Lincoln. I went to Lincoln High School. I graduated from UNL, and then just recently graduated from law school um, here in Nebraska, and then got my in leadership education as well. So I'm Nebraskan through and through. I so proud of that. I really do love being from here. And um, I like our motto, the good life. It is the good life, I think, in a lot of ways. Nowhere is perfect, but it's been really good to me, and I'm really grateful for that. I think to kind of talk a little bit about the story of me here in Nebraska. It starts with my grandparents. Albert and Joanne Maxey, they moved to Lincoln from Indiana. And so my grandfather played basketball. Some people may know a little bit of his story, but they moved here because of that. He played at Nebraska and, left an impression there is how I'll say that. And then my grandmother, she uh, took up space as a stay-at-home mom and volunteer, community service volunteer. She made her mark as well. And so they moved here from Indiana. My mother and her siblings were all raised in Lincoln. And then me and my siblings were raised in Lincoln. So we are third generation Lincolnites, very happy to be third generation. A lot of history and connection and culture in our family here. Um, but the story of me individually, because that's kind of the context from which I came, um, the story of me individually is a little bit different. So I am the second oldest. I was the first girl grandchild, I believe, in my family. So I had princess status until my sister came along, um, 15 months later. And I hope she hears this and knows that she ruined it for me. I um, I think I would say that my story is one of finding myself and being okay with being myself, and, um, and I think I had a lot of those experiences to find myself early on. I think I love music. That was one of the parts of me that I am glad that I discovered, but I just like, when I look back on it now, I realize that I had no confidence. And coming out of high school, I had no confidence. I believe I had a sense of talent. I had teachers who would say that to me. I didn't really believe them, um, because of some experiences that I've had, but my adult life has just been this journey of learning how to be confident, and learning how to um, embrace myself. And so I went to Australia and I got a level of confidence there. I worked at Huddle. I developed a level of confidence there. I worked in the Nebraska Honors Program, developed a level of confidence. And slowly, like, I just began to, um, like, see the evidence of my competence and ability and potential in that. And the more confident I became once I saw that evidence. And so, I mean, and through all of that, I discovered what my real passion is and what I believe my purpose is. And I have a desire to understand and change society's structural systems to be more equitable and fair. And I believe in the power of collaborative problem solving to do that. But it all started, I would say, with acceptance, self compassion. And I'm in the process of learning that it is a process that I'm learning how to be kind with myself on, because I often feel out of place for one reason or
Mhm,
another. I think you can kind of fill in the blank. I'm too fill in the blank or not enough fill in the blank. And I'm sure a lot of people maybe can resonate with that. And but I guess I just kind of realized that there's a reason why I am the way that I am.
mhm, mhm. You know, Shannon, I remember, you as a student in the leadership and diversity class, and you and I engaging in conversation where I think that was probably the first time that you recognized that you had a level of discomfort with your
I did.
Blackness. So, you wanna talk a little bit about that?
So, I'm from Lincoln, as I've said before. There is a difference between, I think, the population of Black people in Lincoln and the population of Black people in Omaha, for example, or at least Black people who have grown up around mostly other Black people, like a more homogenous group. And so I remember being 10 at school, and there was another Black girl who came up to me and she said that I talk like a white girl, and I just had no idea. I it really stayed with me because I was confused. I was like, "What do you mean? I don't know what you mean. I don't understand where this comes from." And I think that was um my first real introduction to how I didn't resemble the rest of the Black community, um, in some ways. In my classes, even though I had fairly multicultural schools. I don't think there was any like majority of the schools that I went to, which I think is really interesting. But because I, you know, I made it into the AP classes and the higher, classes or whatever, the gifted, I think is what they call it, the gifted classes. There were not many other Black students in those classes with me. I was often the only one. And if I wasn't the only one, I was definitely the only Black woman in a lot of those
Mm.
classes. And so I think I I really learned early that there's something different about me, and I'm not sure what it is, but it doesn't seem to fit in. I had a relative of mine, I I guess, criticize me for being quieter, or criticize me for reading more and just doing more observing, and it made me feel like I was being Black wrong, like, because I love fantasy books and, um because I love, band and just those things that I mean, and again, if you go to different contexts, of course, there are Black people who do band and are nerdy and all over the place, but I didn't know that. I wasn't aware of that, and so I had a discomfort. Even when I went to college, I had people I lived on my floor, I lived in an international community and a music learning community at UNL my first year, and when I went to the dining hall, there was a group of Black students there who called me racist because I sat with the girls on my floor instead of sitting with them, and in my mind, it's just like, I don't know who you are, like, I know who they are, I don't know why I would just and I think it's for me, it's the difference between growing up around people. It's and I think this is my understanding because I didn't grow up in a homogenous Black people group. Um, but my understanding is that there is more comfort in that group for the people in the group, if that makes sense. So it was weird for me to not feel more comfortable with them than it was to be with people that I knew. And for me, that was weird. It was for me weird for me to like it was weird for me to sit with people I didn't know, regardless of whether they were Black or not. So that's the that I I really struggled to find a place, and so when I took your class and I had at this point, I had traveled the world a couple of times and seen a couple different things, and here I thought I was, inclusive myself. Here I thought that I was, um I just I did. I think a lot of people are overconfident in their own intercultural competence, but I was as overconfident. And when I realized that, oh, I struggle with my own cultural identity and accepting that and seeing beauty and positives in that, it took a lot of intentional effort to change those narratives for me and get exposure. So I'm thankful for your class because I'm not sure how else I would have known that. And what I think happens is when we don't look at how even we reject ourselves, sometimes we miss the richness exists in that context, and that's why self-compassion is and I'm coming back to it. It's so important because I didn't know what I didn't know until someone had the ability to bring that to my attention, and I had an opportunity and choice to say, "I'm gonna take this information and do something with it, because I want to be a good whole person." So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Often I run into individuals, whether it's in the academic classroom or clients, where they are of a what I call a global majority, which is non-white people, someone who's of the global majority. It could be a Black, Indigenous, person of color. Majority of people on the globe are not white, Caucasian. And so individuals who are of the global majority, but grow up in an environment where they're not segregated by their race or ethnicity or national origin or religion or whatever, What happens is as they're growing up, they're starting to question, where do I fit? With Black people, I don't talk. You don't talk like a Black girl, so you can't be Black enough, right? And then if you were, you would have sat with us. So, to your examples from college, while you grew up in an environment where you engaged in conversation and interactions with people from all walks of life, right? And so this idea of fitting in becomes a self identity crisis almost. And what I like to remind individuals is you were born to stand out for your unique gifts and talents. You do fit in. You fit in a uniquely different way. You know how to bridge the differences between these groups. If we can get individuals like what you're describing yourself to get to a space to where you're truly comfortable in your own skin, regardless of race, ethnicity, national origin, sexual orientation, whatever it is, if we can get you comfortable in your own skin and recognize the spaces that you do fit in, which is a lot of spaces, right? It's not either this or this, it's and both. Then you are uniquely gifted to bridge differences and get others to grow and develop. And I was so thrilled to see you get that at such a young age because, you were in your early 20s when this conversation was happening. And here I'm working with clients who are in their 50s and they're just discovering this. So to be able to help you get there was just such a delight to watch that unfold in you.
I'm grateful for it, because I just think about all of the things I would have missed, had I not taken a look, and I think this is why dealing with shame is so important. Shame does not, in my opinion, in my understanding, assist with your personal development and growth.
Correct.
I wanted to make sure I looked up an article before I got here about this because, um, shame tells us Brené Brown talks about this.
Oh, yeah, she's great.
She talks about how shame tells us there's something wrong. Yes. And that is what I was dealing with. I thought I was the problem. I thought that I was the one who didn't fit. Everyone else was good, and I was the one who didn't dress the right way or say the right thing, or I didn't fit in as a Black person. I didn't fit in as, um, a Black person in the white spaces either. It's just where do I belong? That question of where I belong, but realizing that that's not a me thing. But if we don't realize that, we can overcompensate, which is what I was doing in a lot of ways. I was overcompensating with, I would say, humor, probably, with pretending like things didn't bother me when they absolutely did bother me. I have so many memories of things that happened in my high school that I just had such a problem with, but because I was trying to belong, I never said anything, and I never did anything because it was I thought that I was the problem, and it wasn't the case. Um, and so I think that the shame part of that says I'm wrong, I had to, and everyone deals with shame differently, I think, but for me, I had to prove to myself that I was worthy, and so I started doing things, I started getting friends, I started trying to, like, make people feel like they could be comfortable around me no matter what, and so but I realized that that was really an effort to soothe my inner pain of not fitting and not knowing where I fit, and so, um and even believing that I was capable of change. I think that's the other thing shame does. Shame says, "This is who you are. This is how it is. There's no growth mindset. There's no development that can happen because this is the way you are."
Mm. And we know that's not true because of neuroplasticity and all the research that's out there. So, self compassion is significant. Knowing how to deal with shame is significant. And, we use emotional intelligence as kind of the starting point for practicing this. I want to hear from your perspective, having done this work but in within yourself and also with
Yeah.
clients. Why do you think self compassion and emotional intelligence are such an important place to
Yeah.
begin?
Well, we were just talking about shame, and I think self-compassion is important because we can't shame ourselves into healthy personal development. Um, and it indicates an acceptance of self, which is the affirmative introspection domain, knowing what makes you tick, being comfortable in your own skin. Dr. Anita Rowe, I love you.
I know, right?
I'm a fan. But just it gives us the ability to see ourselves more clearly. And we're not
Mhm.
overestimating. Well, maybe we are in some areas, but when it comes to compassion, we're not overestimating our abilities. We're not underestimating our abilities either. We are being kind with ourselves and our story and understanding that our story and the things that may have happened, they're connected to I guess let me back up and say there's a reason we are the way that we are. Reason I
Mhm.
respond this way. There's a reason that I react this way. And when we really can have compassion for those moments where we fall short or when we just aren't living up to our own expectations, um, we have an opportunity to engage the frontal lobe or the conscious mind, as you like to say. This is
Yeah.
your work, and I'm
Yeah.
obsessed with that as well. But self-compassion is that first kind of step. So there's another article that I looked up because I just wanted to make sure I had it ready. But there's an article in the Harvard Business Review called "Give Yourself a Break." It's about self-compassion, and Serena Chen is the author of that article, and she says that three skills emerge from self-compassion. Um, it's first being kind rather than judgmental about your own
Yeah.
failures. The second one is recognizing that failures are a shared human experience. We all
Mhm.
fail. And that's, again, for me, one of the things that really hit me. We're all human. I am human. I make mistakes. Um, and third, they take a balanced approach to negative emotions. It gives us the foundation we need to growing and to engage in this work continually over time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really love how Dr. Rowe and the whole EID Institute, Emotional Intelligence Diversity Institute, reframed their kind of the title of those emotional intelligent
Me too.
quadrants to to be like, instead of self-awareness, it's affirmative introspection. And so the idea being that I am positively looking upon all of the pieces that make me who I am. Even if it's a weakness, I'm not going to live in judgment of myself. I'm going to learn to accept that. And the underlying premise is, if I cannot accept this piece in myself, I will project that dislike. Psychologists know this. I will project that dislike onto other people. And so, yes, self compassion, that kindness, that balanced processing, which in our inclusive leader mindset research, balanced processing and being authentically
Yes.
myself showed up as key attributes of inclusive leaders. And so I love that you're talking about that. Now, in order for a person to be able to go down that path of self compassion, um, we have to create a space for
Yeah.
empathy and compassion, not just for ourselves, but for others around us. How do you think we should do that? What could we do to create those kinds of spaces?
I think it boils down to understanding our unconscious mind and the conscious mind. I love how you talk about it. I'm not a neurologist. I'm gonna go ahead and say that and get that
Yes.
out of the way. But just understanding the limbic brain and the importance of the frontal lobe. And so my understanding is that you can reprogram your unconscious mind with your conscious mind. You can change your patterns and your
Mhm.
habits with the frontal lobe that exist in your limbic brain. And so um I think for me it's important for people to understand their story, and understand how they became the way that they are as much as possible, right? We're unfolding. There's no way for us, I think, to completely know everything, but as long as we're on the journey, I think we can have the opportunity to really look into what Bobby Hero calls the cycle of socialization, where we start, we're born, we don't have any expectations because we're just little babies, right? We don't have nothing. And then we move on and we get our first socialization from our parents. They tell us what's right and wrong. Then we get our second socialization from culture and society. And then we get rewarded and punished along the way for how well we adhere to those structures. And that is the reason we are, that programs us. It gives us our sense of right and wrong. It gives us our sense of, oh, yes, it gives us our sense of what we believe is us. And we need to understand that. I think that also has implications for communication, for all of the other domains of culture and understanding how we fit. And so when we understand that the ways in which we were conditioned to believe what's right, what's wrong, I think we have the actual opportunity to say, pause, really think before we're reacting. I love in Dr. Anita Rowe's book, and I think the other authors as well, it says that observe, decode, react, that where we actually have the ability to observe within ourselves or observe within others, make sense of that, and then react. And we get to
Yep.
choose, and we get to choose a response that reflects our truest intentions rather than just reacting. And so I'm going to give myself permission to pause. That's what I need. I need
Right.
space. I need actual physical time to think through. And I hope, I think other people would benefit from taking time and taking space to
Yeah.
think,
Yeah.
process before they respond.
I love how you described that, and I just showed the video, shared that video because what it was actual footage of the brain cells creating neurotransmitters. And so when you're describing the pause, you're training your brain to pause. So that neurotransmitter, the first time you do it, it's kind of a faint line. But the more often you do it, the more you breathe, the more you pause and go, what's actually
Yes.
true? Or what is it about this situation that's causing me to react this way? The more we pause and think through curiosity, what we're doing is we're allowing our prefrontal cortex to come back online and create those neurotransmitters and connect those things. So then that way, that becomes our go to mechanism for responding instead of that fight or flight response, which our fight or flight response is designed to keep us
Yes.
alive,
Yes. Nothing,
right?
yeah,
And it,
there's no morality attached to that. It's
right. And the thing about that is that I think is really fascinating is that um, that part of our brain is wired for similarity and sameness. So whenever we want to stay in our comfort zone or hang out with people who think like us, believe like us, behave like us, have similar political beliefs or whatever it is, what's happening is we're seeking comfort. We're not seeking growth. And growth comes when we put ourselves in those stretch spaces and then we practice those emotional intelligence skills. Yes, absolutely. Creating space for ourselves and for others is, I love how you describe
well, and
that.
I just think it's important that people know though that it's not a matter of good and bad.
Right.
And often this kind of language gets categorized as, we make it seem, or I've heard, let's say it that way. I've heard that people respond negatively to, the terms unconscious bias and unconscious
Mhm.
like, just this idea that we are just programmed to be bad. That's not what this is. It's just what you were taught and what
Mhm.
you attribute meaning to. So, if you were taught, for example, that there's a certain people group you can't trust,
Mhm.
it's not that that makes you bad, it's just what you were taught, and it's important to be aware of that and have compassion for yourself because you couldn't control that. You couldn't control who taught you what or what context you grew up in, but you do have a choice on how you recognize how that might impact your responses when you see someone from that people group or when you see, and just really connect the fact that if this is something that you were taught and it was reinforced over and over and over and over and over again, it's actually going to take work to retrain your brain to think something different.
Yeah, going back to our little video of that neurotransmitter, the longer you have believed something, the harder it is to unlearn it. So if you were, say, 3 years old, the first time you were told, be afraid of this group of people, and that stuck with you, and then you heard it multiple times over the course of your life. It was reiterated by family members. You saw evidence of that. So that's self-fulfilling prophecy. We hear it and then we look for
Yeah.
it. And then we're like, oh, yeah, see, in the movie, they show it that way, or on the news, it's this way, or this is how it's described this way. And so the brain, that neurotransmitter, becomes a super
Yes.
highway. So to eliminate that superhighway, it's an active, intentional, "Hey, that's the superhighway that's telling me this. I don't have any grounds or evidence of this that's
Right.
real." And, I love, Chimamanda Adichie and
Yes.
her TED Talk, "The Danger of a Single Story." One of the things she mentions is the problem with stereotypes, it's not that they're not true, it's that they are the incomplete story, right? So it's an incomplete story that you have been told, but you have believed as
Yes.
fact. And you have and then your body then goes into this, "Oh my gosh, I'm in an unsafe zone." So then, and I think of it like when our boys were little, we would tell them, "We want you to grow up to be educated, hardworking members of society and contributing and doing good." So their little brains think, okay, if I'm going to go, it has to, good people are people who are
Yeah.
educated, good people are people who work, good people are people who are whatever. So their little brains fill in this other thing, right? Unless we as parents come along and go, well, here's the thing. There are good people who don't have the level of education you and I have, or someone has. There are good people who may be experiencing homelessness right now. There are good people who contribute to society in this way. And so we as parents then have to be cautious because those unconscious
Right.
messages we're sending can somehow have that negative effect. So you're
Yeah.
so spot on with
There's
that.
one more thing I wanna say about this, because even when you're just even the messages that we pass down to our children, the messages that we reinforce in other people even unintentionally or intentionally, I think once we realize that, there can be shame. Just to, like,
Oh,
bring
yeah.
it back around to shame,
Yeah.
because I think when we feel that there is, like, I guess maybe, and this is maybe how I understand it, you can correct me if this is incorrect, but, like, when we engage our frontal lobe and our conscious mind, we recognize, "Oh, I don't actually agree with that message about this people. I don't agree that this is the way that things are all the time." Um, we have that moment, but then we can feel ashamed of the fact that we had that in the first, and that is what we need compassion for. Yes. We can't control. that part. And this is I really have empathy for white people in this way because many white people I know could not control the messages that they were taught about people of color, um, to even
Mhm.
say, a lot of Christian evangelicals even, that's the context I grew up in, like, I have compassion for them as well because a lot of times it was just the message that was reinforced and reinforced and reinforced and reinforced even about LGBTQ people, and it's like, once people realize, "Oh, maybe there's a different understanding, there's more information, there's a different way I wanna show up in this space," they don't have to beat themselves up. It doesn't mean that they themselves as a person are wrong. It just means I have room to grow. And I
Right.
have an opportunity to kind of like I did when I was with you and you said, "This is something that I've noticed," and I had an opportunity to say, "Oh, there's something wrong with me." I could have resisted. I could have said, "You know what? I like the way that I am. I'm not going to
Mm.
change." In efforts to soothe that shame in me, and I feel and that's and I just and I'm not saying that the plight and struggles of people of color, um, are invalid. I'm just saying that people who are realizing for the first time some of the messages that they've been taught and are trying to retrain their brains, it takes a lot of effort and energy and work and compassion to keep working on that. So I wanna thank, white people who are doing the work, who are taking steps to retrain those messages, whether it was
Mhm.
somebody at, Thanksgiving who said something off about a a group of people. It's hard work, and I hope you keep doing the work because people of color need you to do that work.
Right, we are as humanity, I think our survival, our very survival depends on it. If, if we're not able to get to a space where we value and if we continue to dehumanize
Yes.
populations, it becomes that, there's a continuum from dehumanization to
Right.
euthanization to genocide, right? It's that continuum. You begin by
Yep.
dehumanizing and then you move to genocide eventually. So we have to stop that and we have to look within ourselves. And you're right, we can feel the shame of, oh my gosh, I can't believe I thought that way. I mean, I still, I've been doing this work for 30 years and I still catch myself having those moments and I go, come on, Helen,
Mm.
you teach this, you
Right.
research this. Seriously, are you going to listen to that
Woo.
voice? So, I mean, I literally pause and then I go, it's okay that you think it. I'm proud of you for acknowledging it. It's, it's that you're not acting on it, right? We hold ourselves accountable to be
Yes.
better.
And we all have to do that work. We all do.
And that work which is hard. And I had someone once ask me, "Why do the work if it's hard work?" Why do the work if it's hard work? And the answer to that why is different for every single human being on this planet. Every single human being has to discover, why is this important to
Yeah.
me? And that's why we do that with our clients. So I want to kind of move us in a different direction now, Shannon. How have societal pressures impacted your experience as a Black woman and how you see yourself, how you show up?
I wanna first start by saying I love being a Black woman. I love myself and my
Mm,
heritage, and I
mm,
love Black women. We
love
are,
that.
um, we are community-minded, we are direct, we are beautiful and creative, funny and intelligent. I love Black women. Oh, oops. I love Black women. I think society does not love Black women as much as I do, and I think I can see that in the way that Black women are represented in the media. often as aggressive and sassy. I've been called sassy more times than I would like to acknowledge. I mean, maybe I was just being honest, but we can call it sassy because she's a Black woman and that's a stereotype. Loud.
Why, thank you. That's your response when people say you're sassy. You go, "Why, thank
Oh,
you. I own it."
I think my response is more like, "Why do you think me saying what I think is sassy?" I don't I don't understand how that makes me sassy. I think it just makes me honest. And I think, for me, and even just thinking about, like, if you see like spatterings of diversity in shows, it's often like a Black man and a white woman and some other man or woman of a different ethnicity. It's not normally a Black woman. But it goes further than that. It's not just media and how represented, it's beauty products, accessibility to the foundation I want, the lotion I need, the hair products. It's completely wild to me how a Black woman cannot go to any salon they see. They have to look first and say, does this person specialize in textured hair? And most of the salons don't. So, Black women actually end up doing their own hair. I have been doing my own hair for a long time. Part of that was because I was in law school and we needed to save money. But the other part of it is I can't just go anywhere and get my hair done. I have to find we have a literal separate store we go to get hair stuff. And it's really unfortunate that there are so many ways in which Black women aren't seen as brilliant. I did a little bit of research just so I could have some numbers for you. Um, but according to McKinsey& and Co., they do a woman in the workplace report every week, I think for Lean In, and there's a significant gap between women of color and white women, especially when it comes to C-suite positions. That's not just Black women, that's women of color in general. So women of color, I believe, had 7% of C-suite positions where white women had 22%. And so if you even break that down further, I'm sure Black women are completely eclipsed when it comes to that actual number. And I don't think it's any coincidence that Black women are the largest group of entrepreneurs growing in the US. And I think part of that is because we can't get promoted in our spaces, for whatever reason, right? Who know, maybe it's education, maybe it's that intersection of being Black and a woman, that intersectionality, especially for, women who maybe have kids, Black women who have kids. It could be a number of reasons why Black women aren't getting promoted to the C-suite positions, but we try to build our own tables. Black women are resourceful, and I love Black women for that. We're gonna figure it out. But then on society, on top of that, you see that a couple of the funds for Black women businesses got shut down because of the case, that came out recently from the Supreme Court. So it just feels disheartening, to see Black women trying so hard to meet a real high level and start their own businesses, build their own societal table where they can exist and have prosperity and achieve the American dream, as we like to call it, but then have them not get promoted. And then when they really try the funds to help them support themselves and their families, they get shut down. And so I think we judge women for being sorry, we judge Black women for expressing frustration, but we also don't ask that question, like, who is protecting Black women? Who believes Black women are worthy of that same level of protection? And just to cite something recently that happened in Congress, you had Marjorie Taylor Greene, say something negative about Jasmine Crockett, and who protected Black women? AOC. She said something and she was like, "This isn't a," and that's the kind of response we probably should have had from the person leading that committee, actually. And so when Jasmine Crockett defended herself, people started saying, "Wow, Congress is devolving," because she would not let it slide. And Black women often have to be in that position where, I'm not sure who's going to protect me. I'm going to protect myself because someone has to know that that's not okay for them to do. So, anyway, I think Black women have every right to be upset and frustrated and angry about the way things have happened in our country, and um even myself, the number of times I go into a store and get followed, or, I never go to self-checkout because I always get someone, and, like, truly, without fail, someone always is standing, like, right next to me as I self-checkout, and I'm just like, "Okay." I don't really feel like everybody is having the same experience, so I always go to the line. I rarely carry a bag into the store with me, um, because I don't want the hassle of going through it. I don't want to be, assumed that I'm stealing. And here I am, I have 2 advanced degrees. I'm gonna start my job, as an attorney very soon, and I still am getting followed around in the store. There's just no. Yeah,
Yeah, it doesn't
it doesn't.
end, right?
No.
Yeah. Everything you just described, Shannon, um, is exhausting. Has to be so exhausting to constantly be in this space of on where you're defending yourself, standing up for yourself, protecting yourself, not to mention your sons, your spouse, everyone else that you're worrying about. And I will say my experience has been some of the most resilient, talented, hardworking friends, women I've had the pleasure of having in my life have been Black women. And I love that because I have gained so much. I mean, I wish we didn't live in a society where you had to work so hard at that. And that's obviously what we're trying to change, um, to ensure that yet at the same time, I also go, golly, such resilience, such strength, such drive. Think about the leaders that are rising up, these young Black female leaders. My experience when I was working in healthcare, one of the things I saw right off the bat was the person who was going to have the poorest health outcome was a Black woman. So when it comes to like health equity, yeah, yeah, when it comes to health equity, Black women are most likely to have poor health outcomes, and so then when you retrace that back to where is the origin of that, it's a complex issue, obviously. We can't just narrow it down to one thing, but there's so many things in our society that points to this strong bent against appreciating and creating space for a Black woman to be the strong woman that they are and exist in our
I would
society.
say that there is a strong Black woman narrative. That's, I think, another one of the types of Black woman, and I think that I, as a Black woman, want to be seen also as tender and soft, you know? I'm tender and soft. I am not only strong. I'm strong because I have to be, and that isn't always a good thing, And like you were saying, having to be on all the time, even in educational contexts, having to like, I can remember times in law school where I really felt pressure to not make a mistake because I was the Black law student. In my first year in law school, there were 6. Is that the right number? 2, sorry, I'm gonna count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 of us, 7 Black students in the law school, where there's, like, 400 some students. 7 in the entire school. And so I I felt pressure to have my stuff together. I felt pressure to not make a mistake, because if I made a mistake, then I would be seen as a diversity, um, a diversity scholarship person or whatever. I can't say hire because it's school, but like, or admit, that's, yeah, diversity admit. And that pressure, it weighs on you. I think I think it's really unfortunate that we have to be fairly perfect in order to be seen as equal as other people. It's really unfortunate, and I think we can look at the Obamas in the White House as a good example of this. We had hardly any scandals except for that tan suit he wore. Um, no, and you don't have to agree with his policies to recognize that he was poised. Him and Michelle were poised and composed, and they had to be. They didn't have an option. They couldn't afford a scandal. They couldn't afford to be because they were essentially the face of Black people, even though they didn't intend to be, right? That's probably, they entered into a space, they realized and they understood the assignment, they did. And so I think it feels hard to me to feel like I have to be strong. I want to be soft. In that, and I want people, I want society to see Black women as great tender beings that are strong when they want to be and want to engage that way.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, yeah. Thank you for that. I appreciate, what you're saying here. So how do we create spaces for young Black women to be authentically themselves?
Yeah.
Whatever facet of their identity they're exploring and wanting to express, how do we create that?
I would say a couple different things. I think we need to listen to what Black women are saying. Um, and we can't discount them for the way they say it. Black women will say it, and there's a cultural difference between, I think, Black women and white women in the sense that we tend to be more direct. Um, and I think there's socialization reasons for that. But we can often get written off for expressing any kind of frustration or anything with what we're saying, even if what we're saying is warranted. And so I would say actually listen to the content of what a Black woman is saying. Um, and then if you're uncomfortable, ask yourself the question, what is it about the way I'm being communicated with that's making me feel uncomfortable? It's it maybe has more to do with how you're interpreting what they're saying and putting meaning onto it rather than what they're actually saying. Uh, I would say that's the first thing. I think the second thing is to give them their credit. Black Black women are often, I would say, maybe absorbed. Our culture, our language, our lingo, it often gets absorbed. And I see this on social media all the time where a Black woman creator will create a joke and then it'll get absorbed and then it'll be way more popular by this other person that's doing it. Or even people who will talk like Black women or just try and, do the finger, like, do the head and the finger thing, and they're trying to imitate Black women, but we're not giving Black women any credit for that, and is how that comes and provides, something to the moment. And so I would say, um and this has happened to me often where someone has taken credit for my idea, my content, my work, and I what can I do? I don't know what I can do other than say, if you're in that position and a Black woman has an idea, make sure she gets the credit. Um, that's huge, I think. And the last one, I think it's very simple, but do not touch or reach for their hair. Don't do it. It's small, but it goes a long way. A Black woman will immediately well, I would say not everyone because all of us are different, but the majority of us will immediately be extremely uncomfortable if someone gets into our space and tries to inspect us for one reason or another. Happens more than I would like to say it happens, but it does. And we're not pets. We are people. And even though a lot of us tend to change our hair, I am one who changes my hair often. And I love that because I get bored easy. And so I love to change my hair, but it's not an invitation. It's my hair. Yes. Keep your hands to yourself. But again, it's about safety, right? It like and I even think not even reaching, but just accommodating. I had someone in a professional context tell me that my hair was dramatic one time, and I didn't think it was dramatic. I just thought it was my hair, and it just it's now I'm perceived as just picking a hairstyle and now it's dramatic. That seems to have a negative connotation to me. And so I think I think understanding that if we're going to talk about Black women's hair, we probably should talk about the fact that Black women can't go to any salon and have a separate store that they have to go to, and that the styles that they had to do were because our hair isn't necessarily designed it wasn't created necessarily for this climate, and so we have to find ways to make it work, and that's, um
Yeah.
yeah.
There's a whole segment we could do on educating people about the history of how Black women's hair was used against them, and, historical, you know, things that happened that were, like, ungodly, in my opinion, that should never have happened. So, Shannon, it sounds like you have experienced so many things, and prior to your, recognition of, "This is who I am, and I'm gonna love and appreciate myself for who I am," w you may have used some part of your identity, I don't know if it's personality, humor, whatever it is, to cope with the pain of being a Black woman in America. So, how how did that show up, and what was the impact of that on you?
Um, I I feel a little emotional about this just because when you're surviving, you don't always know you're surviving. Trying to get to the next moment and get to the next space where you can breathe for a minute. And I think I'm thinking about high school in particular. And I think that's where I started recognizing that I needed to be less controversial to some people. And I needed to be more of a social butterfly, someone who is outgoing all the time, is um someone who is overly friendly. And I don't think it was inauthentic. I think it was maybe for that period of time, but it definitely was diminishing my own brilliance. Uh, so that I could be accepted. I think sometimes I would I would I would have an idea or I would have a question about something, and to other people it maybe seemed stupid, but I realize now I was asking questions about fundamental things that we just skipped over for whatever reason. Um, and but then when I realized I felt sorry, when I would ask those questions, I felt like I was wrong again, and so I learned to be quiet with what I really thought um and not think critically myself about the things that I was doing or saying or how I was showing up. And um I think about even just my understanding of my beauty even that's that's been another journey I have had to go on. I was mercilessly ridiculed for almost everything about me in high school. whether it was my personality, I was being too dramatic, whether it was my hair, because I would go to the hairdresser and she would put my hair in like little ringlets and like, whatever it was. And I really felt like I had a hard time. Um, I was the type of high school girl that like if I liked a boy, I told the boy. I went up to the boy and I said, I like you. And then like, what? I mean, but I look back on that and I was like, wow, she was just being direct. She was being brave and saying what she wanted to say. And that kind of came off a little bit weird. So I stopped doing that. You know what I mean? I just stopped. I pushed me down. That's the only way to say it. I pushed my down. I pushed my emotions down. I pushed it all down so that I could be accepted. And once I started waking up to the fact that I could be confident as myself and I started accepting myself and accepting um sorry, accepting how I was made is enough and I don't have to do anything to be enough. I am enough. And then out of that I can be brilliant or I can be funny or I can be welcoming, whatever it is, I can be that with I don't with not without being inauthentic. So,
Right. Yeah, you learn to give up the facade because who you are is absolutely enough. Real brilliant, kind, funny, tender, intelligent, driven, all those things are what make you who you are. And I'm so glad that you are in this season of self-compassion and continuing to discover and continuing to, build doing things that continue to build, your self-confidence. So you became involved in a sorority that is for adult women of color. And I love this because I learned about it through you. Tell us a little bit more about that and how that has influenced your self compassion and comfort in your own skin and those
yeah.
things.
Well, so and I wanted to say, so the sorority is, it's often a safe it's for anyone can join the sorority. It's not only for Black women, but that's how it started, and so I think that's just it's one of those, things that we say to make sure people know that we're not excluding people from the sorority, but this is how it started. So I am a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, specifically the Psi Chi Omega chapter here in Lincoln, Nebraska. It was founded in 1908 as the first African American sorority. And I think it's important to recognize that sororities back then were not inclusive. They didn't allow Black women to join. And so Black women, as Black women do, and often Black people do, or any people of color who want to have some kind of connection and affirmation, they create their own. And so we did. And amazing women like Maya Angelou, Coretta Scott King, Felicia Rashad, even the Madam Vice President is a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority. So I feel really honored and special to be a part of this amazing group of women. And it's a place of solace for me, because I exist in predominantly white spaces most of the time. And I just am so grateful that I have them. I was inspired by two amazing women here in the community to join. And I was so fortunate to be able to. So Karen Bell Dancy, director of the YWCA, and the amazing late Dr. May Colleen Jones, um, just, um, just phenomenal women, and women um, who cause me to feel like I can do the dreams. I can accomplish the dreams of my heart. I can go after it. I can be all of those things. I can be strong and smart and tender and funny, and I can be all of those things, and both of them are just some of the most accepting people I've ever met, and they've been through, their own challenges, and so I couldn't be more excited to be a part of the sorority, and I think for me, the journey is a little full circle, because I struggled with my Blackness and carving my Blackness, but I found a place, and that makes me so happy where I can be myself, where I can, um, enjoy and reflect and just have a shared history with a lot of other people, so, I feel really honored and blessed and just proud of the growth that this journey leads to, like, a lot, and I think you talked earlier about the why we do this work, and for me, I think part of the why is I don't want anything holding me back. I don't want to be held back, not by myself, not by other people. I want to be all that I can be, and part of that is embracing for me, part of that for me was embracing the parts of me that I was trying to push down, instead wrapping my arms around them and just saying, "I'm proud to be a Black woman. I am proud to be, in a from a lineage of intelligent, resourceful women."
That's awesome. That's fantastic. Yes, and I love that this, organization exists for everything that you've just described. It creates that space where you can be authentically yourself and have the support of others to continue to grow and learn. So you just finished your law degree and you did a joint program during your law degree, the JDMS, the leadership education program, masters, as well as your JD. I'm just curious, how do you envision using the education you've received and kind of where you're launching into with this new career path? How do you envision using that to change the world in creating more inclusion in the spaces you're in?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mentioned earlier that I am interested in understanding and changing societal structures and systems. And one of the ways, and one of the important ways to understand the system is understanding how the law operates and works. And um, my joint program was a little bit, it was interesting because the concepts taught in law school and the concepts taught in leadership aren't always aligned. And I would say sometimes they're actually the exact opposite. And so, for example, we're taught in the law to maintain the status quo. We're taught to it's that system of deference that judges get, I'm going to defer to this court, I'm gonna defer to this authority, I'm gonna defer, and I feel like I literally remember hearing someone say, "The law is meant to maintain the status quo." And in some ways, I can understand that, right? Because if you have inconsistency in the law, you're gonna have a lot of unjust outcomes. And so I on some level, that makes a lot of sense. But the leadership, in my understanding, the leadership portion of that, is a little bit juxtaposed because leadership often disrupts the status quo and asks the question, how can people be better served? You know, so and I think one of the things I loved about my program, and this is a shout out to Dr. Mary Emery, she really taught me about appreciative inquiry and changing the question to not how can we maintain the status quo? Like that's literally how can we keep everything the same? It's almost a minimization set. And it limits the difference that actually exists between people and situations and circumstances. But I think the question is, what is just, what is fair in this situation? And I think if that's the question we're asking, maybe we get a different result, maybe we don't, but I think that question has a broader impact. And so for me, in equality and fairness is core. It's one of my core values. I don't know how to explain it. It's just the way I'm built. Like if it's not equal, if it's not fair, Shannon has a problem. And so I researched in my degree judicial objectivity and in hopes to understand more about it because I know how powerful it is. And so I think for me, all I hope to do is use what I've learned about leadership to ask different questions in the legal context so we can achieve more just equitable outcomes for people who have to go through the process. I think I think it's incredibly telling how much emphasis we put on our public defenders, on the prosecutors, on the people who are actually trying to serve our communities, and how little emphasis we put on their needs. And and you can tell because of how little they are paid often, how much emphasis they get. And it's great work. It's amazing work they get to do. Um, but it's really hard work. And I think we need to do more work on the systemic, structural level to make that easier for people. And so that's my hope. My hope is to benefit that. I'm interested in one day maybe becoming a judge. So maybe that's in my future, but who knows? Who knows?
I love it. Well, I'm here to support you and to do whatever I can to help make that dream a
I've
reality.
been called
I'm so
judgmental
proud
my
of
whole
you.
life. I wanna put it to work. I wanna put it to good use.
Yeah. That's funny. So where can our listeners learn more about you? Where can they find you? Are you on social media?
So I still have my LLC. So I do workshops on occasion. So shannonmangram.com. You can find me there. I also am just really enjoying my time as an associate of Helen Fagan and Associates. So you can find me there as well. Um I am on LinkedIn, Shannon Mangram, and that's Mangram, MAN as in Nancy, GRAM, Mangram. But it's Mangram. You say it Mangram. And you can follow me there. But honestly, I I just wanna do this work. And so if people want to collaborate, because I believe in collaboration and how we can solve problems and how we can really help each other. I really think that our answer is in the connection, as we maybe alluded to earlier, our connections with each other and people who want to build these types of mindsets so we can actually make real substantive change. I want that.
Yes.
So if you wanna
Yeah.
collaborate, I'm ready.
Reach out to her, shannonmangram.com, or you can find her on LinkedIn or through our website, helenfagan.com. So reach out. Shannon is an outstanding trainer, educator, public speaker. If you're looking for someone, highly recommend her. Thank you so much for your time, for your insights, for sharing your personal journey, your brilliance, all of those things. I know our audience is just going to have to listen to this podcast again and again because there's so much that you shared that is rich. Thank you, Shannon.
This has been Because People Matter, a podcast about celebrating leaders who are harnessing the gift of human differences, creating inclusion while driving success in their organization and communities. You can find links to any resources mentioned in today's show notes. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe and leave us a 5-star review. Thank you for listening. Because People Matter is brought to you by Helen Fagan and Associates. We are changing the world one inclusive leader at a time. Go to helenfagan.com to learn more about what we can do for your organization.